Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Thank God the show actually went live because it was hanging there for a while. I'm pretty sure it's Mother's Day this weekend. It shows how much attention I pay to it, Russ. And, anybody who's, the son of an elderly mother, you have to realize that you have to make plans well in advance for, either Mother's Day brunch or something like that. And usually with my family, that rests on my niece, and it's Friday and I haven't heard where we're going. So I think my mother is shit out of luck. Is tomorrow Kentucky Derby Day? Because I did see some. I think
it is. Yeah.
It shows how much attention I pay to horse racing. I'll tell you one thing. Like, I know nothing about horse racing at all. I used to know a little bit about it, but nothing. And I'm one of those guys who bets one race a year. That's the Kentucky Derby. And I go in and I look at the names of the horses. And if there's a name that I think is, okay, it speaks to me or it's connected to something, I go and bet it. And a few years back, there was a horse called Battle of Midway. And since Midway is my favorite history movie, and I did my master's thesis or aborted master's thesis on the Battle of Midway, I bet it to win. And of course, it was like a 50-1 shot. It showed. It didn't win. So if I would have bet it to show, I would have won like $150. I bet it to win and I won nothing. So anyway, let's start the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So first off, because you said it was Mother's Day, I'll read a famous quote. It's Mother's Day. So to all you mothers out there, happy birthday. That's from the late great Ralph Kiner once said that to open a Met broadcast. Fabulous. We'll live in that will live on forever. That's fantastic.
That's like the famous line that I just heard yesterday from Don LaGreca, the host of the Michael Kay show, co-host of the Michael Kay show in New York, because yesterday was Cinco de Mayo. He says, happy Cinco de Mayo, February 5th, and it's May the 5th. But anyway.
Well, yeah. Mike, sometimes in this life, you're 0 for 330, and then sometimes in this life, you're 1 for 331. So yesterday, going into the 9th inning of the Phillies game, the Mets were 0 for 330 in the last 25 seasons when trailing by 6 runs plus to pull out a win. Well, they scored 7. They pulled out a win. I turned it off. And then I went back to it because, we were watching hockey, and it was 7-1. And I just couldn't believe it. People should listen to the Gary Cohen call. He was up out of his seat screaming. He threw his pen at one point. It was really unbelievable. But what I am enjoying is in Philly, they have pulled every negative stat they could. They started their postgame with the Phillies have been here since 18 whatever, and this is their worst loss ever. And I was thinking, Michael Barkan's kind of old, but I don't think he was around in 1880 something when the Phillies started. But okay, I'm with you. And then they were like, well, in the last 684 games, this hasn't happened in Major League Baseball. 684 tries with teams leading by more than 6 runs heading into the 9th inning. And then here's a message to the haters. And this is why you watch baseball. Stuff like this happens all the time in baseball. Oh, yeah. Not this particular thing where a team's scoring 7 runs in a 9th inning to pull out a win, but things you have never seen before. And if you hate baseball, then yeah, you turned it off and you left. And I turned it off because I had to watch hockey. It's my job. But I got a text and I was right back in it because somebody's like, are you seeing what's going on? And I'm like, well, I am now, right? But at the end of the day, for those people that always say there's no excitement in baseball, I point out the Mets-Phillies game yesterday.
Kev, there's been enough Yankees games where, they're losing to. I remember they were losing to the Orioles. This is 7-8 years ago at least. They were losing to the Orioles like 8-1 in the 5th inning, and it was a massacre, and I just turned it off. And then somebody messaged me on Facebook and yeah. Do you see this comeback? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I go back and it's 8-7 and John Sterling is losing his mind. Oh my God. That type of thing. You never know when it's going to happen, but it always does happen. but it always seems to happen with either one or both of the teams are incredibly flawed. If you're a good team, more than likely, if you're up by 7 runs, you're going to win.
Well, yeah, you are, but the baseball does allow you to nickel and dime your way back into it. I mean, it's 9 innings long. That's
Right.
so if you fall way behind early, you can just kind of chisel your way back in. And that's kind of the beauty of the game. I remember I saw a play on Broadway, and the guy has this monologue where he hadn't been a baseball a fan before, but he became an accountant of a team, and he became interested. And he stood up there and he said what he realized he loved about baseball was the fairness of it all. He said, it's the only place I know in the world where everybody gets the same opportunity, regardless of race, creed, or color. You get 3 strikes. You get the same amount of innings. They don't take them away from you. You can't be denied based on that. You always get the same chance. And I it's one of the most memorable speeches I can ever, because he's right. Baseball does have a fairness to it that, cannot be denied. Although I want to bring this up too, because I know you're both big baseball fans like I am. Have we reached the point now, because of the preponderance of Tommy John surgery, that at the minute a pitcher feels a little twinge,
Yes.
you're like thinking, oh no, because it's amazing to me that we're putting this Orioles pitcher on the 10-day IL. Is that what it is now? IL? Yeah. And then the next thing he's having Tommy John. And, that's happened numerous times where it just looked like a little thing. He may miss a start, and then, no, he's having Tommy John.
I'll give you the 2 words to look out for: forearm tightness.
Yeah.
Whenever they say forearm tightness, the guy's done.
I wonder, and I'm not a doctor, and this is really ludicrous for me to even speak to this, but it sort of reminds me a little bit of knee and hip replacement. Like, because the medical advances are so good, like it seems like we just do that as just a matter of course. And that almost feels like what we're doing with baseball pitchers now. Like, we're having high school kids getting it, college pitchers getting it. The Tigers had a promising young catcher last year who was in the major leagues. He had some soreness in his arm. Next thing you know, we hear he's having Tommy John surgery.
Tommy John, you're right about. But because I was on a recent doctor visit with someone I know, hip replacement or knee replacement was like 4th on the list. So they still don't want to do that first.
No, not replacement, because I think Ray Emery is the only one I can think of that had a hip replacement. But
even in regular life, just everyday life.
Right. But the torn labrum in the hip.
Yeah.
The one
I'm talking about older people for that. I mean,
right.
but I mean the pitcher thing, again, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe that's before those people's careers would have been in jeopardy, and they're not now. So
I think the comparative though between Tommy John is the ACL injury, because now, like a guy like Joe Burrow, they were talking about this on local radio. Tre'Davious White, who's an all-pro cornerback for the Bills, he blew out his knee on Thanksgiving of last year. Had the ACL tear. They had the surgery right after, and they're expecting him to be back probably at 100% for training camp, or at least at the beginning of the regular season. And Joe Burrow got hurt around the same time the year before, came back for the beginning of the season and led his team to the Super Bowl. An ACL injury used to be like 2 years. I mean,
I
was saying maybe
since for as long as I covered the league, it was 4 to 6 months, and I covered the league 30-some years.
Oh, I was saying was maybe they would be back in that time, but to be back to where they were.
But I still think that's true of almost every major injury. Like I always say, they come back then, but they're really not the same right away. It takes them a while just to get back.
And off season and another off
season.
Well,
or at least. Guys that come back at the beginning of the season, I think by the end of that season, now they're starting to play. And a lot of it isn't even the injury, I think. I think it's the timing of, I've had players tell me, and I'm sure Russ has too, like if they're off skates for 48 hours, they don't feel right. They feel a little off, they're out of shape. They're not as finely tuned. So I think it's interesting, but
it's the confidence that they have in the knee or the arm or whatever. I think that's part of it as well. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, another thing about skill and everything, especially when we've always had the arguments about whether or not a player can stop. And players always, one of their defenses is always, I couldn't stop. I was committed. And I always say, oh, yeah, you can. Because the difference is, the reason you're in the NHL is because you have that ability to make like instantaneous decisions and just remarkable, movements at times. I think players really kind of use that as an excuse when, like you and I could use that because we don't have that ability, but they do. That's why they're playing in the NHL, because they can make those decisions, so quickly and everything. So,
all right, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, May 6th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and to answer the chat room, I love hockey, but hockey is my job, and I love the New York Mets. And if I wasn't watching 2 hockey games at one time, yes, I'd be watching the New York Mets too. But I don't have 3 televisions in my house. So I hope that clears that up for everybody.
I don't even know where to go with that. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm old. I watch whatever I want to watch. So.
And I'm Michael Agello, and that was the longest intro that we've ever had in this show, and that's me talking, who usually has long intros. And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with a couple narratives before we just talk about the games. Just touch on the games. We won't go too long into it. Kev, one narrative that I've seen over the first few games in each series has been goaltending and injuries to goaltending and teams having contact with the goaltenders. Now, obviously, that's more in focus in the playoffs when, you want to get in the goalie's kitchen. I understand that. But, Ranta getting injured, even though it was not a situation where, Casey DeSmith got hurt, but wasn't a contact injury. It was just the length of the game. Saros getting hurt before the playoffs, and now Rittich being really bad. But goaltending seems to be a narrative in these playoffs more than it usually is. And injuries to goaltenders is seeming to be a constant right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have viewed it because you're absolutely right. It's become the story. I mean, the fact that we have a couple of teams down to their third goaltenders, but I think it's just coincidental. Like, I don't see it. One of the things that often happens in the postseason is we overreact to everything. Mm-hmm. And, I've seen people, they're treating this kind of like it's epidemic, but I just think it's coincidental. I mean, it just sort of happened. So, I mean, like you even answered your own question when you said it's tradition that you go hard to the net. Like, well, yeah, it is. This has been going on forever and a day. So I don't think for a minute, like I had someone say, oh, yeah, they're going much harder than they did a year ago. No, they're not. They're going as hard as they always do, but this year guys are getting hurt.
Well, so. Russ, and I was at the Leaf game on Wednesday, and in the early first period, Patrick Maroon, standing at the edge of the crease, was just waiting for somebody to push him just a little bit so he could throttle himself into Jack Campbell. That's what.
Yeah, that's never happened before. I've never seen that. Never once. Never once. In all the 30 years, this is brand new stuff. Man.
No, but you know what? I will say this, Kev, and this caused a big deal in the Rangers Penguins game. So Jeff Carter, goes in the Ranger zone, skates through the crease area, doesn't touch Shesterkin, goes in the corner. Shesterkin goes in the corner. When Carter comes out, Shesterkin puts his leg out to get Jeff Carter in the knee. And because Carter's a big guy, Shesterkin goes down, and he goes down in a heap. So they do give Jeff Carter the penalty because, hey, he did hit the goalie outside the crease. And then Ranger fans acted like Carter went after the goalie, which he didn't, but he did sort of incite the goalie by doing the cut through in the crease, and then just tried something dirty in return. Like, that's where, and the Ranger fans were probably thinking, oh my God, Shesterkin's done for the series now, and he got back up. But that's one of those things that is going on a lot.
I'll just repeat what I said before. That's never happened before.
Right.
Goalie trying to lure a forward into a penalty. Long time. I've never seen that. I'm just stunned by that. It's all just new, and they've just come up with that, So
and just to continue on the just breaking news here, Josh Yohe posting that Casey DeSmith is out for the rest of the season. He had core muscle surgery. So there has been talk of Jari potentially coming back from, I think it was a fractured foot, but that puts it square. If that's not the case, that puts it squarely on the shoulders of spicy pork and broccoli, Louis Domingue, in goal for Pittsburgh. And talk about that game, Kev.
Let's just talk about that a little bit first, just because I don't know about you, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because I saw that, both live and on replay. Did that look like a core muscle injury at the time? I don't even understand that. Hey, we've seen this before where guys, you don't realize the extent of the injury. But if you could have said, everybody take a guess on what kind of injury he's got, I think most of us would have guessed many things before we would guess core muscle.
I in real time, I was messaging Russ when I'm watching Boston, Carolina on Wednesday night, and I saw Pasternak make contact with Ranta, and I'm like, okay, what happened there? Because it didn't look like he made major contact, but he went down on the ice and was bleeding, and I'm like, what the hell happened?
Well, even with DeSmith, though, I remember when he went over to the bench, I was thinking to myself, what's going on?
He shook it.
And then he went down the tunnel. You had no idea.
He talked to the trainer. I was watching it. He talked to the trainer. He shook his head.
Right. I saw that too.
And he skated there, and Domingue patted him on the back because he basically.
But like Kev said, I had no idea what was wrong.
Yeah. No, it's just amazing. Sometimes you just don't know. But I think that also speaks to how fast guys are going, and all that kind of stuff. And everybody's everyone's a chunk of granite out there now. Everybody's is so well conditioned, and they all live in the weight room, and so we're essentially dealing with car collisions out there.
And that's what it's turned into. You're right.
Yeah, it's so hard to really, because it used to be you could sort of. You almost knew what the injury was as soon as the guy went down. You go, oh man, that's a knee. Now you got no idea. Plus, I'm not even sure I know really what a core muscle is, even though I write about them. So
I mean, could I point it exactly out? No, I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I couldn't either. So
and the other narrative that seems to be continuing in a number of series, not just the one that not just the ones that I'm paying attention to, is the increase in penalties, the increase in power play opportunities. I know that the game on Wednesday, Tampa Bay got 7 power plays against Toronto in game 2. I've watched a number of other games where the power play chances are up. And Kev, just on the Tampa Toronto series, Sheldon Keefe, the Leafs coach, is switching his lineup and taking out physical guys like Clifford and Wayne Simmons, and putting more skill guys in, because if they're going to call the penalties like they call them during the regular season, then that's going to, those have more of an impact in the playoffs, and he's going with a faster, more skilled lineup. I remember Russ had pointed out too that he didn't mind more penalties as long as they were even-handed, and I thought about that afterward, and I think most people would go along with that. All you really want is even though it's impossible to get totally perfect officiating, I think we would just like to see some measure of consistency. You're never going to get consistency because a penalty is still subjective, no matter what it is.
And honestly, I'm not saying consistency where each team has the same amount of power plays.
No,
it doesn't work out that way in life. I mean,
no.
But what fans were getting mad at was, oh, these are ticky-tack calls now.
Yeah.
But,
I'll bet.
And that's the that's.
Well, yeah. I don't like ticky-tack calls either, so they bug me as well. But the problem you run into, and I think this always comes down, and I spoke about this last time, officiating by memo is too difficult on officials. And I think traditionally that's what we've seen. We got the rules, and then we get the memo.
Right.
at the start of the playoffs about it. And if I was official, and I'm sure they do, I'm sure they just shake their head going, all right, well, what are we doing this
It's
year?
an impossible job.
Yeah, it is for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, here's where the narrative. I mean, okay, so Toronto, and I'm sure a number of teams are going to do this as well. You start the playoffs calling it this way. Okay, you want a level of consistency, and then all of a sudden it changes to where you're going to have a game where they let everything go. And like now, Toronto has made the switch to a more skilled lineup. If all of a sudden Maroon and Corey Perry and Ross Colton start beating on the Leafs, and there's no reciprocation, and they don't get called for it, then you're just giving that team the advantage. And I think that's inherently unfair.
Yeah, that's why I say no. This is where I say, hey, you know what? It's still up to the players on the ice to do something. So
but we know
Jake Muzzin will do something. Maybe,
but we know, Russ, we know who gets called for penalties. It's usually not the initiator, it's the reactor.
I get it, but it's
and that's the way it should be.
Again, if you want to talk about ridiculousness, what did Ryan Reeves do for the Rangers yesterday to play more minutes than Alexei Lafreniere? Nothing.
Yeah.
He's big and tough. That's why.
I do think, and I'd actually have to sort of think about this a little bit, but one of the things that people hate in baseball, I actually like, which is that you have to adjust, like hitters have to know the umpires. Yes. That everybody's strike zone is a little different, and you're required, and that's why veteran players, they sort of know how certain umpires call the game, and that gives them an advantage. I think you have to do that in the NHL as well. Like you sort of know, the way referees have to do it, and you react accordingly. Just as like if you're the Maple Leafs and you adjust to the changes that Tampa Bay made from games 1 to 2, you also have to adjust to the way the game is being called. Like I think it's fine that the coach reads it. Hey, and because you do hear that all the time. Coaches say, once I realized they were going to call it a little tight tonight, we did some things differently. To me, that's all kind of part of it all. That we just sort of have to kind of adjust to it. Now, if you've got a team where you're prone to penalties, then that will impact you obviously worse than other teams. So,
right.
So actually, here's a funny quote, Mike. You'll appreciate it. Chris Johnston asked Jason Spezza about taking the bus.
Oh, I saw that.
I saw that. That was a great.
Right. He goes, hey, that's above my pay grade. They want me to be on the bus. I'll be on the bus. They want me to be on the plane.
As long as it goes to the arena.
Right, and we mentioned it yesterday because of COVID still being a factor right now in the playoffs. The Canadian teams are driving into the U.S. because they don't have to test. To fly into the U.S., you have to test. To drive into the U.S., it's so stupid. I mean, the laws and everything are so inconsistent. So if you take a bus to Buffalo and fly Buffalo to Tampa, you could be positive, and they won't know it if you're right. But if you're flying into the U.S., you have to take the test.
Yeah.
Okay. So the narrative.
Did you went to the game last night? Did you have to test either way?
No, I just had the proof of vaccination. Now, ironically, the Canadian government now they do a random selection of people who cross the border, and in the last 2 weeks, I've been selected for a random test twice. And the thing is by the time they get this request back to me, I'm already back in the U.S. They think I'm staying there for 2 weeks, and I'm like, dude, stop giving me the random test. I'm a day tripper. I come in and I go out. If they ask you, I mean, that sort of takes the randomness out of it. Right.
Right. So,
exactly. Now, continuing on the narratives here, last night, the narrative for 3 of the 4 games was the team that lost in game 1 bounced back in game 2. The Rangers came back after losing in triple overtime, and they win 5-2 over the Penguins. And ignoring the Carter Shesterkin kerfuffle. Russ, this was a pretty dominant performance by the Rangers. I mean, you expected the Penguins, being a more veteran team, to be a little worn out after that long game. And I thought, Panarin sort of bounced back after an average game one.
He did. I think he had 3 points.
Yeah. And I got him in a pool, so I'm very happy.
Yeah, and one of them they kicked in the goal. That's fine. If you're around the net, good things happen. But he made some great passes. Look, the Penguins did everything they could to protect their goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just did. And they've been in this position before because for whatever reason, the Pittsburgh Penguins have lost goalies a lot over the years in the playoffs. If you ask Crosby or Malkin how many times, it's probably like 6 times or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. So that's what they did, but they're not going to be able to do that for the entire series. They're just not. And Domingue's just not good enough to be able to do that. So unless they outscore the Rangers, I just don't see how they're going to do it. And Alex DiOrio, maybe they throw him in for a game, but I doubt it. So, I mean, they're in a ridiculously tough spot because there really is no more solution for them other than with the guys on the ice or playing dirty. And they're going to try and play dirty for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Kev, we can't overlook the Penguins because they have so much, Stanley Cup credibility, if you want to say so, with Malkin and Crosby and Letang. There's a lot of talent there. But really being on the third string goalie, and if they do get Jari back, it's going to be less than 100%. It really is wounding for that team. And this is 2 years in a row where they've been undone by their goaltending in the playoffs.
Yeah, although for different reasons. So last year, Jari wasn't any good. Yeah, I mean, to me, these playoffs have been just fun, and they're fun because of the randomness of what's going on. I mean, other than Russ, most of us don't have any clue of what's going to happen because historically that's going on. But saying all that, like this time with Shesterkin being in the Rangers goal and the Penguins forced into using the number 3 goalie, like that is such a disadvantage, a disadvantage that I just don't feel, unless Malkin and Crosby can suddenly, be the best they've ever been, I don't see there's any chance here. I mean, Shesterkin was so dominant during the regular season. Like, he was the best goalie in the league this year, and Domingue isn't good enough to be a goalie. He's not even a backup. He's a number 3 goalie. So this is really, there's a kind of a unfairness here, and it's just bad luck for the Penguins. So I don't see them having much of a chance in this series. And, the real lack of confidence I ever have predicting a playoff series, I feel pretty strongly, unless there's a miracle here, I think the Rangers will win this series.
And Russ, the only criticism I have of the Rangers so far is, boy, are they depending on Shesterkin a lot. I mean, was it 118 saves in 2 games? It's like, you would think that they'd be a little more strapped down defensively. And
they just aren't like that.
Yeah.
They're just not, Mike. I mean, this is, Lindgren would help a little, Nemeth out a little, maybe you take away 4 or 5 shots, but this is who they are. Like, this is why Shesterkin's on my heart ballot.
Yep.
Because he doesn't get any days off. He doesn't get a game where he has 18 shots. It's impossible with this Ranger defense. So, you know what? Yeah. He has to be that guy.
Russ, it's almost like the Rangers defense is almost too skilled. Like,
it is almost like that. You're right.
Yeah, because they all can handle the puck and they can move it.
They all can handle the puck and skate.
Yeah. Like I contrast because I got to watch Moritz Seider all year, and obviously, there was a great young defenseman that came up with the Rangers, and he won a Norris in record amount of time because he's unbelievable. And I saw Moritz Seider come up, and I think he will be Rookie of the Year. I don't know that for sure, but I think he will be. And I think there's a Norris in his future too. They are completely different players in terms of their approach. Yeah. Like Seider, he's very good offensively, very good, but all he thinks about first is defense.
Right.
And where a Fox is the other way. Like, he thinks, he can play defense, but he thinks offensive first. And that's just a different approach. And that's when you're going to play like that and there's a whole team full of them, there's going to give up a lot of shots, but you can do that. I mean, the Buffalo Sabres back when Hasek was there were the biggest risk takers in the league because they knew Hasek would save their bacon. And I think the Rangers can play that way and be successful because Sturkin is so good.
Because they had their number one center was Mike Pekka, who was a 20-goal scorer. They had to take risks to generate offense because their offense wasn't that good.
Yeah, it wasn't good enough.
I try and rely on for the Rangers since like Lindgren and Nemeth are really their only like strong defensive-minded guys. What they rely on is a lot of puck stripping, and like a guy like Miller, because he has very long reach, gets away with it a lot of times, even from behind. So that's just the way they play it.
I've never seen a defenseman go deep more into the offensive zone than Fox does. He's I think he's behind the goal line as much as he's at the blue line sometimes.
Yeah.
So Florida bounces back from the loss.
Breaking news before the Florida.
Go ahead.
Lisa Dillman reported that Rasmus Kupari could be in tonight for Quentin Byfield.
Okay.
So that could be a thing.
Okay. Florida bounces back from game one loss, disappointing loss to the Capitals with a 5-1 win, 5 different scores. Score for the Panthers. Bobrovsky and net played better. Kev, the thing is, it's like I didn't expect the Capitals to be in this series. They surprised me with game one. I give them credit for that. But Tom Wilson, there's talk that he may be out for the rest of the playoffs. It's a lower body injury. And with a weakened Ovechkin, not 100%, I don't give much hope for the Capitals.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It does. First of all, Florida's so strong, and we expected them to win that series. And then on top of it, like Wilson's just because there's so much hate out there for him and the way he plays, sometimes it's lost what an effective player he is. And they needed him in this series, and so that's just a tough loss for them. And the fact that their goaltending was not very good down the stretch. I don't think you can beat Florida Panthers without quality goaltending. And, they rose up in game one and, which again, just sort of speaks to what we see in hockey. And we talked about the stat before where I was just stunned that, that over the last 20 some years that the lower seed has won almost 50% of the time. Like that's incredible when you think about it.
You think about it with, sorry. No, I was going to say, you think about it with Florida, and we were thinking, hey, Washington did play a really smart, heavy game, which means they do need Wilson. But how long were you going to hold back Florida's offense?
No, I agree. I mean, I think, the one thing that has been true this year is that we haven't seen as much parity as that we have seen since, the 2004 loss season, as the salary cap really has kind of evened it out a little bit. But this year we did see more haves and have-nots. I think the difference between the top and the bottom, is a little bit more distinct than it's been in recent years. And you see that with some of the top teams. Although, I wouldn't say that's the biggest disadvantage in a series. Like if anybody's watching Colorado, Nashville, to me, I wrote this, but I really believe this. As I watched the first game of the Colorado, I'm thinking, John Hines must be a genius to have gotten Nashville into the playoffs because, Colorado just was so much better than them.
Well, the funny thing is, we'll talk about this series in a second, but just to touch on this, Kev, I think that Nashville suffered from the wrong matchup. I think if they would have played Calgary, which was within a point of them playing Calgary, it would have been a more even series because their styles are very similar. Them against Colorado, even though last night was a 2-1 game, and we may as well talk about that one because that was the only game that didn't follow the bounce back scenario. But Connor Ingram, who you talked about a while back, and we mentioned after Rittich couldn't make a save to save his life, I think he had 41 saves and he was fantastic.
Right.
I would assume they're going to go with him for the rest of the series if Saros can't come back because at least he gave him a fighting chance.
Yeah. Played well.
Played well.
Played well, and this is like the Connor Ingram when he was a prospect, and then he got lost. And then if Kevin didn't mention him this year, I wouldn't have had him on my radar. But once Kevin mentioned him again this year, then I started watching him again. And that's when we said yesterday, hey, this is an upgrade for them in net compared to what they had. And it was. Problem is there is no really anybody who can cover Cale Makar at the moment. If you give him a half an inch on the ice, he's going to score a big goal. Like it's just,
yeah, I mean, and that's just so sports. I read an article that Adrian Dater, and they lose the lottery, they're really disappointed, and but the consolation prize is Cale Makar. Now, that's not the way they wanted it to go, and they really couldn't have done better. I mean, he's the perfect fit, and he's got this sort of Victor Hedman rover attitude about him too. He's well up into the play, and he's thinking, offense. But on that particular offense, it's more significant because he has guys up front that can really, wheel and deal. One point about Nashville, which I got to be honest, I really had stopped watching them much. I just don't find them all that entertaining, and you got to make choices every night. And as we know, because I've talked about it, I was watching Tampa Bay more because I was curious about how they were going to do. There were other teams I was watching as well, and I just found out, I had no idea, but I was talking to someone from Nashville organization, that their young rookies who had played so well early did not play well in the last 20 games, and really had stopped being a factor.
Yeah, Gino dropped off.
And the Trennan. Yeah.
Trennan didn't score yesterday, but
But apparently they just have been very disappointing down the stretch. And they also have a half dozen guys who have only scored a couple of goals in the last 20 games. Like, they had really fallen off. Now, we'd all taken note of, I think, that they had the worst record in the last 10 games of any playoff team. They just hadn't played well. For that reason. So I guess it's just not surprising, but I mentioned to him, and he goes, even though the fans are all over Hines here, he goes, people within the organization realize what a great job John Hines did, in preparing this team. So I just think that's been a mismatch. Colorado just has too much.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just difficult for them, and but so many 1-1 series, a lot of fun.
True. So a weird thing that somebody caught on camera the other day, and I don't know if it's an every game occurrence. The same way that Mark Sanchez had eaten hot dogs on the bench during a game with the New York Jets, they caught Cale Makar eating cookies on the bench during a game when he was. And then I kind of wonder now, is that something where he kind of keeps him close by in case his blood sugar's down or something?
Yeah, quick energy.
Yeah. No, they've. I know. I've done enough stories with Max Domi to know that he's had to consume food during games.
He's a type 1.
So. That's all.
Yeah. He's a type 1, and for a different reason, I saw Kyrie Irving during the NBA playoffs. Because he's Muslim, he was during Ramadan. He couldn't eat until the sun went down, so he's eating a fruit cup on the bench because he hadn't eaten anything all day.
Yeah, but under any circumstances, can you imagine any of the team dietitians thinking that it was wise for Domingue to eat spicy pork and broccoli in the middle of?
No, Kev, I talked about this yesterday, and I want to see if you've heard this too, but. I did a story on this once, and when William Nylander talked about eating the sushi, I had asked some teams and some North American teams and even some European when I was covering World Juniors, what's your pregame meal? And mostly the North American teams will not do fish. They either do the chicken and pasta or beef and a vegetable. They will go nowhere near fish, where European teams will use fish because that's in their everyday diet and they don't think twice about it.
Right.
Again, I am shocked that the Penguins just are letting guys, and it seems to be only when they're at home, they don't have the controlled meals. And I'm shocked that he wasn't home and they let him get something off.
Well, first of all, the pregame meal is usually around noon or 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, so I don't know what that was about. Now, when you go into overtime, and there's one of my all-time favorite stories. It was in Nashville, and the Ducks Predators in that playoff series that they had, which was a very good series.
Right.
One of the games went multiple. But one of the games went multiple overtimes.
Yes.
And the Ducks players were hungry, and there was a feeling they needed food, and they told one of the PR guys, "Get us some food." So he was walking around and saw an open door, and there were food in it. So he went in and grabbed the plates of whatever was there and brought them all in. Turned out afterward it was supposed to be the post game food for the Nashville Predators. So,
Nice.
So they, in a classic case, they stole their food.
I don't know if they do this anymore, Kev, but I know in Philly, when they had some single and double overtime games, that pizza was consumed.
Yes.
Yeah. Pizza in the themed Pat LaFontaine game, they brought pizzas in, and people were scarfing them down. And that seems to be what people like, what the players like.
Well, yeah, pizza. You remember the whole thing with orange slices and things of that nature.
Yeah,
I can tell you one thing though. There was a triple overtime game that I covered for during the Calder Cup playoffs with Marlies and I think it was Syracuse, and the media hadn't eaten since before the game, so it was like 5:00, and they brought up like candy and like Doritos and things of that nature because we were all starving. It was like midnight. It's like so if we're starving, not doing anything other than watching the game, imagine what the players are, what they're feeling like. Getting.
You always have to hoard food, Mike, when you're at a game because of that reason.
You got to tuck those Swedish fish in your bag for later on.
You have to.
I had a coffee crisp during that game, and I ate it already, so I couldn't take a picture.
Yeah, well,
especially in the playoffs when you know there's going to be long overtime games. As a veteran move, as a reporter, you always have to have food in your bag.
Well, here's the other veteran move too. And I think, when you're no matter, and not so much in the playoffs, but in the regular season, you got to get, if you're a Diet Coke drinker, you got to get 2 Diet Cokes and put 1 in your bag because you're going to lock those sodas up as soon as the game is over. And, if you're like most of us have to stay at least an hour to get our story done, and you want to be able to sip on a water or a Diet Coke or something, you got to have that one in your bag because you're not going to find it otherwise.
The first thing I do when I get up to the press box, I get a couple bottles of water for the trip home, and either a Diet Coke or a Coke, whatever is available. But yeah, I load up early because I know by the middle of the second period everything is gone.
This is a strategy. You have to do it.
No, definitely. Now, the other game from last night, just touching on it briefly because the Stars bounced back after being shut out by Markstrom. They shut out the Calgary Flames 2-0, 29 saves for Jake Ottinger. Russ, this is just going to be a tight series. I mean, these are two teams. I think Calgary's a much better defensive club, and they're much more physical. But Dallas, made the Cup final a couple of years ago playing tight hockey, and they can play that game. So I think this is going to be a close series.
Yeah, actually, this is probably the best opponent for Dallas because they can't blow anybody out offensively, right. And Calgary likes to play it close, and they believe they're always going to win if they play it close. But, Ottinger can be an equalizer. He's a big goalie who can be hard to score against. He's very calm, and I think he's terrific. I always have. So I still expect Calgary to win, but I do feel like the way they play is going to keep Dallas in this series. I still would be surprised if Dallas won.
Yeah, I mean, they played the perfect game for them, they being the Stars, to give them a chance because, they can't score a lot of goals.
Right.
So they've got to try to win. And I thought I read some of the stories, and I thought all the writers, it was almost like they had a meeting after the game and say, well, how would we describe this? They all used the word smothering, that the Dallas smothered thing. And I thought that was a sort of a good explanation of what happened. The Stars just did a good job. Ottinger, as Russ said, has a chance to be a good goalie. You would certainly take Markstrom over him right now, especially the season he had. But I mean, these guys are
one bad bounce, one bad goal.
Yeah, and it's not like you're splitting hairs when you're trying to decide. I think Calgary will win this series too, just because, and the thing that and again, I've been talking about this for a while. I talked about it again on the radio, and everybody sort of agrees with me on this. But when you compare Calgary and Colorado, and all the things we know about hockey and the little things, like how many times have the coaches said, it's the little things that win,
Right.
The face-offs, the penalty killing, all that kind of stuff, all of which the Flames are great at. And the Colorado Avalanche are terrible at. Last in face-off still, or second to last. And, penalty killing, none of those things. They're not hard to play against like Calgary. They just got great players.
Right.
So.
I do want to talk about faceoffs for a moment, because we were getting to a point in the game where about a year or two ago, there were definitely some analytics people that were writing like faceoffs really don't matter. And I know, some of us in the older school were like, well, if you don't think it matters in the regular season, it always matters in the playoffs.
Right.
And it does. And it still matters.
Especially when you're taking a face-off in the offensive zone on a power play. If you win the face-off, you get to hold on to that puck and properly control for the first minute. Like John Tavares' face-off, he's at almost 80% face-offs right now in the first 2 games of the playoffs. I mean, he only has 1 point, but that's extremely important for a team that needs to possess the puck. They're not a rush team; they're a puck possession team.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like Florida has Barkov and Giroux. Right. On the same line all the time. You could just switch righty lefty and let them do the faceoffs, and there's no drop off. Where a lot of teams have
although sometimes you can get a faceoff win and really not have control of the puck. I mean, we've seen that. But more importantly, I think one of the things that's happened in hockey is the bunkering up of the defense has reduced the value of winning that big draw, because they're collapsing low on the goalie and they're kind of spread around there, and they almost dare you to shoot it. And,
it's low percentage, Kev, but you do see the set play work once in a while from the face off.
Yeah, once in a while. Yeah,
it's low percent. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not the same where we used to get so many. I would love to see statistics on this, but it feels like we used to get a lot more goals off the draw. I mean, we still get them. We see them, but we don't see them as often.
When I see it now, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I wasn't 10 years ago, I don't think.
Usually the guy who loses the faceoff, he at least ties up the faceoff guy enough that it prevents that from happening. Okay, a couple stories here that I want to touch on. The gift that keeps on giving, the Arizona Coyotes situation. Craig Morgan wrote a piece this morning, and here you go. The deal that with ASU, the seating capacity will be 4,700. Portion of that will be set aside for student tickets. Okay, fine. The deal allows the Coyotes to play in the arena for the next 3 seasons with an option for a 4th if their new arena is not ready. But here's the cherry on top of the sundae. Approval of the Coyotes' permanent home has stalled in the city of Tempe, and the city has asked the team for clarification of some of the plans details. And it's $19.7 million construction of a dressing room and training annex for the Coyotes that may not be complete until December of this year, which means that the Coyotes and visiting NHL teams might be forced to use an attached community arena that will be upgraded to standard for the. I mean.
You might as well just dress in the hotel before the game. Like,
why have you walk there in your skates in the skate car? This is such a cluster bleep. It's so ridiculous. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, they've really kind of gone. Although the Tampa Bay Lightning, when they started, of course, when they had their temporary, when they were in Expo Hall or whatever it was called, they did not have good facilities either.
No, but this is a long time ago. Like
I don't disagree with you. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying.
It's like a standard was set, and now they're going way back on that. The other thing is, Mike, like we talked about it, I had mentioned that the board is leery of this ownership. So the fact that it's stalled for them to get more financial information is not a shock here.
Well, remember, they said that there was going to be a vote. There was going to be a yay or nay. I think they said by late April. We're in early May.
I know.
And it's still not. I mean, can we get a decision? If they keep pushing this off, they're going to be in like year 2 at ASU and no decisions being made.
No, it'll get voted down before then. I think what'll happen, and you never know. Something could always change. Money could change hands.
I mean, you could bring in a different.
I think we'll have an answer in the next 2 months.
I wouldn't be shocked too that you'll end up with some other owner. They'll bring in someone with some new money.
Yeah, something could happen.
Yeah, because the guy wants to get. I mean, one of the things.
This board, Kev, this board will pass the deal. They just don't like the way it's set up with this ownership. So what you're saying is completely plausible.
Yeah, and I bet Bettman is sort of looking around trying to bring people in. I did tell the story before, but that multiple times, and with this particular team, we've had owners that have tried to turn over the keys, and Bettman says it doesn't work like that. Right. He won't let you out of the deal.
This is not a lemon you can bring back to the dealer.
Yeah, so because it's just messy there. I mean, and didn't it seem weird to you, like the goodbye to the arena?
Yes.
It
almost seemed like a goodbye to the franchise. I thought
I just thought it was just bringing back the players, like it was Chicago Stadium or something.
Were the Mayflower 18-wheel trucks outside of the Gila River ready to?
Yeah, no, it's just hard to defend it. I think we can just say a couple of sentences that would sum it all up. If this wasn't a team that the league has tried forever to save, they would not have allowed it to get like this.
Sure,
right. If it wasn't a top 10 and a top 10 media.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand. I've looked at this.
Yeah, you should look at a picture, Kev. We talked about this yesterday. They showed a picture of the inside of this arena. It is really small.
I mean, again, I'm not defending what I'm saying, but I do understand at least why Bettman tried to save this early on, because when you look at how it completes their proximity to LA, to Vegas, having that western block in there. Phoenix is a rather large city comparatively speaking, so there's a lot of reasons to be there. But at some point, because of the logistics that have never been worked out, like no matter who's been there. Other than when they started, when we were downtown, that seemed to work okay, but then their arena wasn't right.
And then it works out for the Arizona Cardinals. They don't have a problem at all.
So
because people like football. That's really what the reason is.
Well, for sure, and you're only selling one game a week.
That's true.
And it's a Sunday when you're driving there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and that's
now, baseball's had trouble there. They're trying to get out of that place.
Yeah, it's the traffic there, and for some reason, like if you're a New Yorker or someone who lives in LA, traffic is just part of your life.
Yes.
Like you're not discouraged by getting in there knowing you're going to be in the car. For some reason, Arizona, if they got to drive more than 20 minutes, they're just it's just not going.
No, I give New York and New Jersey credit because before MetLife was built, they were looking at building something like on the other side of the West Side Highway, and they concluded it's just too much traffic.
Mm.
And so they didn't do it.
I mean, I went to one game in Arizona. My friends lived in Scottsdale. The building was in Glendale. It was 45 minutes to drive through the city on the highway to Glendale. And apparently most of the fan base is based east of Phoenix and not west of Phoenix, where Glendale, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of the things here. Russ, Tom Fitzgerald, the New Jersey Devils general manager, I think it was in the end of season media availability, said that he was open to trading a top 5 pick, where they probably are going to finish with a top 5 pick in the upcoming NHL draft. I don't think he specified for what, but he says he was open to trading it for the right price. And you think that this is?
I think it's just so he gets phone calls. I think it's something that the fan base will talk about, and it's something that won't happen because, again, there are very few players in this league that when you're a top 5 pick or a top 6 pick that you're going to get in any draft, that you're going to be willing to just give up for that player, even if he's under term, because there's more downside most of the time to the player you're going to get in return than to that pick that you're going to develop. And especially if it's a defenseman, like if I'm trading to get a forward and this other team drafts an offensive defenseman, that makes it even worse.
Well, and Kev, I was talking to Russ about this before the show, and I said, you're looking at it the right way from the point of 5 years down the road, whoever you take in the top 5 could be a star player. But you have to think that Fitzgerald and Lindy Ruff, who apparently is going to survive there because they fired Nazardine or let Nazardine and Recchi go. So Ruff is part of the near future for that team. They want to win now. And really, they don't. They've got Heishier, they've got Hughes, they've got these young players like Ty Smith. They have enough young players. They think that they need make that 1 or 2 players to get them to the next step. So they're willing to trade a top pick to get that player, whether that's the right player or not. I mean, I don't think it's wise going forward, but.
I don't think it's wise now. I'm completely with Russ on this. I don't think it is. I think everybody, including the owners of the team, have to know that in a salary cap league, you can't give up draft picks and expect to survive. And, is he saying that, if someone offered him, Owen Power for it, would he do that? Yeah. He would.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah. But, I agree with Russ. I think he just points that out. He wants to get phone calls. He wants to know his options. But in his heart of hearts, he's thinking, I'm not likely to move.
This is like a car dealer.
Doing
the switch. You're going to call about this, and he's going to talk to you about Pavel Zacha. That's what's going to happen.
But the other thing, too, is when it's all said and done, he's going to say, there were some good offers, and I listed them, but we just didn't get what we want. And then it looks like he's very aggressive and – doing
what I said, Kevin, and you can answer to this. He said he would have done it last year too. So let's just say, we all know that, and they obviously got the medicals that Luke Hughes was going to be okay from his surgery. Would you ever trade Luke Hughes where you need a terrific offensive defenseman in this league for almost anything? No.
Yeah.
But if you'd have traded that pick and the other team got Luke Hughes, it wouldn't look good, almost no matter who it was.
Like I said, Russ, you're looking at it the right way, but the problem is that the guy who's the GM right now and the guy who's the coach right now not have a job in 2 years, so they're worried.
Yeah, but you're not looking at it the right way, Mike, because in today's world,
I'm not saying I would trade.
You don't think the owners understand what the value of draft picks are? Right. He does. That owner, I guarantee you knows.
Josh Harris does because he sees it in the 76ers.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm saying I would opt to what Russ is saying. Don't trade the pick, but that might not be the mentality of the general manager and the owner. I don't know. We'll see. 4 games tonight. You've got the one series that is really taking a turn for the worse, Kev, is Hurricanes Bruins. Again, Hurricanes are on their 3rd goalie with Kochetkov, but the Bruins just seem to be a shell of their former self. I think it's possible the Bruins with Swayman going in net could win a game, but I right now
I think they're going to win this game.
Okay.
Don't you think? I mean,
desperation.
Wait, are you giving a Mark Messier guarantee on this game?
No, not at all. But I think this is the game, because I don't, I'm never confident that the team's going to win. But I think in this case where, first of all, being a reliever is, in fact, they've even talked about this already. Being a reliever in a game is different than starting for a game, and there's going to be a lot of nervousness. Now, maybe he'll settle down quickly. But he's a younger goalie. There's 2 younger goalies going on, but Swayman at least had the benefit of having played all season. It's not like he was the backup. He played over half the games, or played exactly half the games.
Yeah.
And So, and I do think they're going to at least put on their best effort here. They've been embarrassed all season long against Carolina. 16-1 or 2. They were outscored in the 3 games in the regular season, 10-3 in these 2, playoff games. So I think Carolina is a much better team. But I think in this game, I think Boston will come out and because can we see this Boston team with all their culture of good defense going down 3-0? Like,
I mean, the defense is good, but the offense has not been good. That's the
problem. No, the offense has been horrible. So
yeah. The other 3 series are all 1-1 and all followed the same script. Great performances by Toronto, St. Louis, and LA in game 1. Terrible performances by all 3 in game 2. The Blues and the Wild, Russ, the one thing I heard about the Blues, Bertuzzo is out, Scandella's out. They're shorthanded on the blue line. That could be something that tilts this series to the Wild because the Wild are such a physical team.
Yeah, I'm Minnesota. I mean, again, if the power play is working for them like it worked last game, and they're skating the way they're skating, just pour it on early because especially now, like you said, with these little problems, put the pressure on Husso right away, right out of the gate. Because you've got Marc-Andre Fleury. Even if you're, being a little aggressive, do it. Because that could really put St. Louis in a bad spot. Because I'm telling you, if you get Berube thinking about that goaltending, he'll eventually make the change. He will.
Kev, Oilers Kings, it was flashback to Jonathan Quick 2012 in game 1, and then it was flashback to Mike Smith 2012 in game 2. So the question is, who's got the time machine in game 3?
Yeah, that's right. He was, he redeemed himself for sure. I think it's like yesterday was the 40th anniversary of the Miracle in Manchester, wasn't it? Something like that. Yeah. So, but that's a pretty evenly matched series in my estimation. It shouldn't be, but it is. And so we'll see what happens. I would think that second game 2 win gave the Oilers a lot of confidence, though. That was my take on it. So
Evander Kane had a great game for the Oilers. And Buffalo, Toronto, and Tampa Bay. 1-1 going to Amalie Arena. As I mentioned, the Leafs are changing up their lineup a little bit. Which is smart, but the question is again whether the officiating is consistent. If they call the way the first 2 games are called, then I think it's a smart move.
The officiating is not going to win or lose this game for the Leafs. It's not.
What's that?
The officiating is not going to win or lose.
No, I'm not blaming. I'm saying consistency.
I know, I get it, but you got to just get off it. You got to just.
Yeah,
well,
I
think what's going to win or lose the game for the Leafs is the fact that right now, other than Marner and Matthews, who've been fantastic in 2 games, they're really getting nothing from the second, third, and fourth line. They've got 2 shorthanded goals, 1 power play goal, and then the rest of it is all Matthews and Marner. And eventually, Tampa Bay, if they limit them, they're going to need Tavares and Nylander and those guys to score. So, I mean, the Tampa that showed up in game 2 is the Tampa that I thought was going to win the series.
I'm telling you the one thing, though, the Leafs have been missing all year, and they're still missing it. And at some point, they're going to have to address it. They need more offensive push from the blue line. They don't have it.
Yeah.
Even more with the role they force him in, he can't really do it.
Well, they're Morgan Riley and Jake Muzzin are 3rd and 4th in team scoring right now, Russ, with 2 points. Okay, we'll do the tankathon here, the draft lottery simulator. I can't show it on camera because for some reason, so I'll just hit the button and let you know what it is. And it's the Detroit Red Wings who win the lottery, moving up 7 slots.
They're going to be excited.
Yeah, Montreal is 2nd, so Corinne and all, not Corinne is not a Habs fan. She's a Habs reporter, but Corinne and all the Habs fans will be pissed off that they won't be able to take Shane Wright in the Bell Center. And Arizona is 3rd, Russ. So I would assume Shane Wright goes number 1. Montreal.
The Slovak. They'll take the Slovak.
Shavskovsky, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's who Arizona will take. I think he's right.
Yeah, so
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Logan Cooley then. Logan Cooley will
be gone to Montreal. Yeah.
Well, okay. It was Detroit, Montreal, Arizona, Seattle, Philadelphia. Those are the top 5.
Yeah, Philly. I'm telling you, I've been saying this to Flyers fans all along. The math looks like they're picking 5th. unless something weird happens.
Yeah, it's like a 70% chance that they finish with the 5th pick.
Yes.
All right, good show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another. Oh, not tomorrow. On Monday with another. Not tomorrow. No, tomorrow I'll be doing something probably in the yard. With another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.